Welcome to the BMI Podcast, guys.
Welcome. Happy New Year.
Yeah, Happy New Year.
I don't think I've seen you.
Yeah, welcome back, Mikey.
Thank you.
You know, I've had a few people in here, and
Yeah.
I just feel weird. Like
I
this,
know.
this was the normal, and now I haven't replaced you, bro. Don't worry. And the people have
I'm
missed
just coming
you.
back for the comeback.
Yeah, well, hey, like my goal is to just get as many
Smash
podcasts as I can. I want to network with people. I want to meet some new people as well.
It's such a good platform to do that too.
Yeah, like I really enjoyed it. Like I got to sit down with people and that are in the same industry as what I'm in, and just picking the brain, and then also like from my curious mindset, you know, and I feel like that's what I tend to do well.
I was going to say, how did you find that in comparison? Because that's like, I guess if we ever talk about real estate, you'd always be able to dominate that conversation, right? Like you know that industry inside out. How was it talking with someone else who was in the industry?
Yeah, I find it quite easy. Like it's quite easy to bounce off each other, I find, because you have a lot of similarities. You have a lot of similar hurdles that you've had to overcome.
Yep.
And just I found that quite easy, and it was good being able to just split out the lingo, and then they understand it as well. And then I think it's just that understanding is quite good.
Yep.
But I also like it when I get questioned, and it's comes from the person more, not from the expert mindset, that's gone through it. Like it's kind of good to have those.
Mind, eh?
Yeah, and it's good to pick those small things that a lot of people didn't realize. Like in one of them, for example, he was just like, oh, you know, I bought this house and blah, 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 and then I renovated this and did this, and then I pulled the equity out, and I was just like, whoa. Like, I understand that, but let's rein it back a little bit. Like, how long did it take you to get that deposit? And then literally, it took me 6 months. It was like, so that's a huge part.
That's a big chunk of time.
Big part that is like sort of missing, and people look at online and they think, oh man, I'm going so slow. I'm like, that dude just did a deal there, but it's like realistically, we're seeing everyone summarize little pitch or whatever, and like, this is how it's done. Yes, that's right. But learning how we get to those stages is the most important part. And I think the snippets on social media tend to be pointing us down that direction where you think it's just as simple as X, Y, Z. Yep. When not
purchase, sit, do something, sell. Profit. It's like, not quite.
Yeah. So like, and then I was just like, well, how long did it take you to pull that profit out? You know, like, and that's a year. Yeah. You know, because you still got to do the renovation, you're renting it out, or you're waiting for values to go up, or whatever it is, you know. So like, that's where I really enjoyed that part, like, and actually realizing, hey, well, you're never going to get it dissected all in one go. Yep. So it'll be good to get him back on, and then also I want to catch up with Bo in real estate as well. Like, just it's good to get like updates, you know, every sort of bi-monthly, or maybe even like every 4 months or something. Like every quarter is quite good.
Well, and I think that's what's important too. When you know the industry either vaguely or in depth, you're able to at least examine the things that people say just that little bit more. You know, like, and they might talk about that whole process of real estate, but then having known what that looks like, you can be like, whoa, let's come back a little bit. Let's zoom in on this area. What did you mean by this? Because you almost have that understanding of like, that's not as simple as what is otherwise portrayed. Yeah. Which then makes the listener just be like, okay, now I understand that much more. Yeah.
Well, that's how I always try to listen to people as well. And then especially with the podcast, like I try to make sure, like with us with protein and stuff, you know, like when I was trying to pull out of it more than just the triglyceride or whatever terminology you got going. I was like, hold on, let me slow that down. Like,
exactly.
It's broken up into 3 proteins.
That was ATP.
ATP, yep.
I remember that.
Yeah, well, completely off the topic, but today we're talking about daily habits, you know, and I saw that you wrote about it in your weekly newsletter. Yep. We constantly talk about it for small things that we want people to incorporate into them, but we haven't actually talked about it as a whole, like what sort of habits or forming new habits.
Yeah. And I mean, like, I think especially, you know, new year, new me, it's right at the front of everyone's mind. And even James Clear's bloody book out there, Atomic Habits, you know, like everyone's heard of it or even read it almost to this point, and it's just like, but sometimes I think we can look at habits and almost like the real estate process, it looks easier and it should seem easier than actually what it is once you kind of dive into it.
Yeah.
I mean, we'll get into it all, but I think a lot of that is because, you know, when you realize what a habit is, it's unconscious behavior. It's not just as easy as not doing it. And again, a lot of the times that's because habits by nature are unconscious, meaning we do them almost as an instinct, as a reaction. I resemble it to like scratching an itch. And so if we get an itch, we just kind of scratch it without really thinking about it.
Yeah.
A lot of the times our habits, both good and bad, are itches that we're scratching. And yeah, I mean, first part is obviously making sure that you can become aware of that and know that you're itchy before you go and scratch it. But
well, that's because it's like that's almost half your job, right?
Yeah,
is pretty much habit training.
Yeah.
Like alongside giving good, accurate nutritional information to them.
Yeah.
But it's more, how can I get this person to fix this habit or stop putting that in their mouth, or what's leading them to putting that in their mouth, or like it's sort of dissecting things and then figuring out like, well, how are we going to implement this plan?
Yeah. And I noticed that early on while I was personal training. And I have a kind of saying now that eating and behavior are intimately connected and you can't disconnect them. Like we eat based on emotion, whether that's positive or negative, and it's interconnected, intertwined amongst those things. So we can't, you know, disentangle that. But that was true in fitness too. And very early on, I think it was evident in fitness or in personal training because when you're a trainer, you're with someone for 1 hour of that one day. And, you know, you might see them once, maybe twice, max probably 3 times in a week. And so you're seeing that client once a week for 1 hour. And you're like, well, they have 23 hours in the day to fuck up every other thing that you've been doing in that 1 hour.
Yeah.
And so it's like, you know, I can give these people the perfect program, but what are they doing in the other hours of their day? Fast forward into nutrition, it's like you can do the same thing. You can give them, and I was guilty of this, like, what's the best way to achieve a result?
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, they want this.
Calorie deficit.
Yeah, or fucking carb periodization and shit. And it's like, you get to a place where you can put the best plan in front of them, but if they don't execute it, you're back to square one. Like you're net zero. No one's making progress. And realistically, as a trainer or as a coach, as a nutritionist, that's kind of on me. You know, that's not their fault. It's not their fault that I put something hard in front of them that they couldn't stick to. Yeah. That's my fault for not acknowledging where they're at and being like...
And giving them the background of it.
Giving them the tools and
how hard is it going to be.
Yeah, correct. And even just a tangible plan that's going to be realistic for them. And so as soon as I realized that, you know, that was in part a transition back to relearning, re-educating and restudying to go and do nutrition for one, but also just, you know, sports psych, because behavior change was just such a crucial part of that. And yeah, I mean, like I said, eating and behaviors are intimately connected, but I think you can project that into any goal that you have. So whether it's business, whether it's relationships, whether it's fitness or health, etc., wherever your shortcomings are, most of the time it's because of the habits that you've developed around that area. And so understanding those and learning to not necessarily get rid of them, but find replacements and build awareness around them, I think can help, obviously, people achieve their goals that much easier. Or not even easier, just hopefully actually get to the end of that goal process rather than hitting brick wall after brick wall.
Yeah, well, I've got I've got a few things on the side here, you know, like little notes to talk about. You know, I definitely put in there like set achievable goals. For a lot of people, they don't realize it's really good to, you know, shoot for the stars, land on the moon.
Yeah.
I definitely subscribe to that, but I also think people need to realize that you need to set something that you can go and sort of achieve relatively quickly.
Yep.
And it's just a small little milestone, something that can give you that small little W. Still needs to be hard so that you're pushing yourself and you know that you're putting yourself into the right places and doing the right habits.
Yep.
But I think for that little bit of a ego boost or whatever you want to call it, it's just that motivation.
Yep.
It's setting those little achievable goals is
100%.
quite important, you know?
Yeah. And a lot of the time, like it's, I always say to people, plan for your worst day.
Mm-hmm.
So set your targets based on a worst day, not your best day. And, we always do that. We go in and we set goals, we set targets, we set behaviors, and we're like, well, I'm going to exercise, 5 times a week, right? It's like, well, you're not even exercising once a week at the moment.
Yeah.
So what makes you think you're going to go from 0 to 5?
Yeah.
Like on a shitty week.
I bet you get that all the time.
All the time.
Yeah.
And I have to call it out.
Yeah.
Right? It's like, okay, based on a shitty week, what do you realistically think that you'll be able to turn up to? Like maybe 2 or 3? Great. Let's start there.
Yeah.
Is that going to get you to your result the fastest? No. But you will turn up twice a week. Even if that is you get to Friday, you've done nothing, now you've got Saturday, Sunday. So you'll definitely get 2. Now, if you definitely get 2, you'll feel good about yourself.
Yeah.
Because you're like, fuck, that would have been challenging. You would have normally got to Friday, thought, fuck it, and done nothing over the weekend, and then be like, I'm just going to start Monday. And then the whole week feels like a failure. But then you get to Friday and you're like, shit, I haven't done anything. I only have to do 2. Okay, I've got the weekend off.
Yeah.
I'm going to go tomorrow, first thing in the morning, bang, done, tick it off. That sense of accomplishment is the win. And you get that sense of accomplishment, you do it that week, it makes it easier to do it the next week. You might even find you get to Wednesday and you're like, I haven't done anything yet. I'm going to go today. You've now got 3 in a week, but your goal was only 2.
Yeah.
And people will naturally push themselves. Like we do want progression. Everyone wants most of us want some form of progression in our lives. And so when we're seeing the sense of accomplishment and we're seeing ourselves achieve the little things that we do give ourselves, we naturally will start pushing ourselves to do a little bit more. And so that 2 turns to 3, that 3 turns to 4, and 4 turns to 5. And now you've put yourself at 5 without even really thinking about it. Rather than trying to force yourself to get to 5 when you weren't even doing 1.
Yeah, and it's sort of like I said before, how, setting that little target, and that's what happens naturally, right? You start pushing out that, that pebble every time you're like, I can go a little bit harder.
Yeah.
Because you are slowly convincing yourself you're capable.
Yep.
You're turning up and doing the thing ends up making it so that you understand, you believe in yourself a little bit more. The more you turn up, the more you believe in yourself, right? Like the more you can actually go and do the thing. Like it's really hard for people to just jump into the deep end and just go after it and do 5-6 times a week.
Yeah.
You start small and then you constantly just keep moving the goalposts and then you'll get to the task.
And you'll naturally push that goalpost. Like for me, it's like a child learning to walk, right? Like it's learning to walk before you run.
Yeah.
Like you don't just chuck that toddler and be like, yeah, sprint over there. Like they're never going to get there. They don't know how. It's just like most people, when you haven't yet formulated a behavior or a habit and you're trying to set it up, well, a lot of that process is at the moment, you don't really know how to run.
Yeah.
You don't know how to do 5 times a week. So let's not try that yet. Let's actually just try learn to walk. That's closer if you can just turn up twice or just turn up 3 times. If you're already going 3 times, it might be 4 or 5. Right? And it's like, again, what does a shitty week look like? What do you think is realistic based on that shitty week? Because then when you look and reflect in hindsight, you're like, that was a win. I actually got something out of that.
Are you like constantly trying to get everyone to backpedal when you've got people just sitting in there?
That is actually the art.
Yeah,
that's the art because
because you want that motivation, you want that drive. You kind of try and figure out that
where
in between.
And a lot of that is based on one, what have you proven in the past? So if you've proven either to yourself or you've achieved X in the past, and there's prior history of being able to do that, then it's like, okay, I'll let you run. I'll trust that you can run. Even though I may want you to walk.
When I hear that, I also think of some of our friends, and they tend to get caught up in what they used to be as well.
For sure.
And so then that can be a demoralizing thing for them. But they go back into the gym. I haven't been in here for 2 years.
Yep.
I'm down to the baby weights, and they don't even realize that, you're probably only like 3 months of getting back 80% of your strength, and then that last 20%'s probably 4 to 5 months.
Yep.
But you'll get back there eventually. But it's actually a lot quicker than what people think. But it's those first 2 weeks. They're going in and they're feeling like crap. Oh, they're super sore off of lifting 20 kgs or something like that, and they're just like, they can't get over that mental barrier. And a lot of people, they do live in the past. Like I was guilty of it as well. Like I used to, I guess, be hard on myself. I used to be like, well, I'm never going to get my abs, and I used to just believe in it, and I used to think that that actually ended up making me stop trying to get the abs. So then I was settling for, I'll just be happy to be fit and healthy.
I think our self-talk really sheds a light on our intentions and where we're going to be heading. And you can actually use self-talk when you're trying to catch the way you talk about your current bad habits and the habits that you want to be progressing to. And a lot of the times, it is like you'll see people want an outcome, but actually the self-talk that relates to that outcome is completely negative. It's like, I can't do that, I can't do this, I don't want to do this, I don't like that.
It's my genetics. And
And when you catch that kind of self-talk, it's like, well, no wonder you don't achieve it. Like, you're literally telling yourself every day why you can't. And instead, again, like I think this is, for me, why meditation and mindfulness is like a meta tool, is because you can use it in any scenario to catch that. You can catch that self-talk. And it is all you need is to be mindful that that's the conversation that you're having with yourself. And be like, oh shit, like, why am I doing that? Like what is that benefiting? How is that benefiting me? And it's like just catching it and being like, okay, cool, let me change that. And over time, if you've got some practices, whether or not that's journaling and whatnot, you can rephrase that. So every time you catch a negative self-talk, you can actually go and like write something that's then more positive or more in the action of what do you like about the thing that you're trying to do. But a lot of the time you got to catch that. And I think for most people, if you can just pay attention to the times that you're talking to yourself, particularly when that negative conversation comes in, and why you can't achieve the thing that you're doing, just notice it. Like, you don't have to overthink it. Just catch that you're doing it, and the fact of like catching that you're actually doing it will give you an opportunity to change it. But it's pretty. You could almost guarantee where they're going to end up based on the conversation that they have with themselves. Because
a lot of people believe that in a monologue, right? They kind of don't understand how much power it has over you subconsciously. Because like you're saying, like it's learning how to catch that is a huge part of it, and that takes a bit of practice. And it took me a while, and I remember I was, telling you, and even through the podcast for the listeners that listen to a few podcasts in the early days, I talked about how I thought it was easy for you to put down the donut, but for you it was always hard for chips. And when we were talking about that, and it didn't really click for me, because I was going around telling myself, oh man, it's just so easy for him. Like he doesn't have the cravings like I do. Like I'm super overweight and I really struggle putting it down.
It's self-defeating.
That was my own mindset towards how I looked at food. And realistically, I even seen it quite recently with a few other influencers and how they're in shape, and this dude hadn't had a cheat meal for like 3 years, and he's like, there's not a day that goes by that he even talked about like having a sausage roll. He's like, I want a fucking sausage roll with sauce all over it. And he goes, when's the last time I had a sausage roll? 4 years ago. But I want one every day almost. But that's what it's like, But he knows, because I think what he talked about is the door that it would open if he allowed that back in. And I'm probably going through that a little bit right now, being off my plan and whatnot. I've had my snacks, and I did 2 days of pretty much just like eating whatever I want. And then I was like, why did I do that? All right, now rein it back. And then I just fell back into my healthy eating habits again, and I don't have any cravings again.
I mean, for me, so this is interesting. That's what I actually think is it's the polar opposite end of the fitness issue. So in fitness or in health, right, you kind of have two in North Pole, South Pole, and one of them is you have absolutely no control. So there's no control. You just eat whatever you want. You're at the whim of every itch that you've got and craving that you get. and almost obsessively eat. But at the other end of the spectrum, you obsessively don't eat. Or it's almost like orthorexic to a point where it's only healthy. And so you're ultra restrictive on everything and you don't allow any cheat meals. And what I think kind of like the balance is what I call training the bear. And training the bear is whether or not it's the sausage roll, whether or not it's the donut, whether or not it's the chips and dip. It's a lot of the times if there's a bear outside, we close the door.
Yeah.
But it's learning to have the door open and train the bear to actually come through your door so that you can actually engage with those things that you otherwise want rather than having them have this utter control over you. Because we almost take it from I think it's from like smoking and alcoholics and drug abuse and things like that. Like, obviously in that case, the goal is to quit, right? We want to cut that out because if we don't, most of the time we end up dying, or there's negative consequences left, right, and center.
Yeah.
Food, for the most part, is not that. It's not taking us to the place of, a lot of the time it is taking us to a place, but it's not as immediately detrimental. We can't OD on a sausage roll. You have a food coma, but you're not going to OD like you would with crack or whatever.
Yeah.
Right? And so we actually need to learn to engage with that rather than just completely pushing it to one side. And how we do that, a lot of times, again, it's just, I can see the slightly disordered end of both ends of that spectrum, where it's just like people get so much food coming in that they don't know how to stop, and then people actually don't actually know how to start. And I was there for a long time.
Yeah.
Like, that was me, ultra restrictive, in a box. Like, I remember Christmases where I just wouldn't eat anything.
Yeah.
So I would, if there wasn't a roast chicken there, I would pretty much pick the salad and just like sit there and not eat.
Yeah.
And then go home and eat chicken. I did it for years. I would have had like...
I remember those years, man. Like, and like it would have to be a homemade butter chicken for you to have a cheat, like extra sauce and
that would be a cheat meal.
No naan.
That would be a cheat meal, like making it at home. And it's fucking chicken breast and low fat everything.
Yeah.
And it's just like you get to a point where the craving still has just as much control over you when you're ultra restrictive as when you're not restricted of it at all. And that's purely because you can't trust yourself to have that without stopping. You have no confidence in your ability to just engage with the food and let it be just what it will be and enjoy it.
Yeah.
And for me, that was the turning stone. It was just like, fuck, like you can't keep doing that, and it was, okay, so how do I do that? How do I engage? How do I have that packet of chips without just like smashing it without even remembering what the blooming thing tastes like and not being able to stop? Not just like knowing that they're sitting in the cupboard. I'd have like, I know that they're in the cupboard because I would have bought them.
Yeah.
They're sitting in the cupboard. I'm like,
so that thought is just lingering in the back of your head.
Yeah, I'm like, fuck, those chips are in the cupboard. Like, they're in the cupboard. And it's just, if they're in the house,
you're like, I haven't made the dip up yet. Oh, maybe I'll make the dip up.
But
put
I know
in
the
fridge.
dips are in the cupboard.
Yeah, but the dip can be made up, put in the fridge, and then I'll be like, man, those chips are there.
And once you start, you can't stop. And so, of course, what do? You don't buy the chips. And so I went for years not buying chips. And I wouldn't buy them. I'm like, I got control over this. I'm good. Like, I don't need chips.
Yeah.
And I'd end up in a situation where they're in front of me. I'm like, fuck.
Yeah.
And just go hard. And it was like I had complete utter control because I just wouldn't buy them. And I went from that to then any time that I was around them, I'd be like, fuck, kid in a candy store.
Yeah.
And being able to break that down and have them sit in the house and be able to actually eat them and then put them back only last year.
Yeah.
Only last year. Even this whole time, like probably maybe 3 years prior to that, I knew what I wanted to do.
Yeah.
I knew that I wanted to buy the bag of chips, not eat the whole bag of chips. And I was able to eat them without the guilt.
Yeah.
But I still struggled most of the time to stop.
Yeah.
Whereas last year was probably the first year that I was able to eat them, put them back, and just move the fuck on.
Yeah, I found that like quite hard with running. you can pretty much eat what you want because you're just hitting the pavement so much,
hard.
and you kind of need the carbs.
Yep.
So like I always found myself just thinking, I'll just have an extra donut, or I'll have another muffin, or something like that. And then luckily, most of my running was done during my 75 hard or live hard program, so I wasn't too bad. But I felt like if I was out of those programs while doing that running, that would have been my justification in my head. That would have been, reach for that donut, reach for the muffin or something like that. That I just wouldn't be able to control because of the output that I was doing, because I was working out twice a day, going for runs. In my head, I would have just definitely started reaching a lot more. And I wouldn't even say I could go and get donuts and leave them here, because I wouldn't say I have graduated to that point. But I definitely graduated to the point where when that thought comes into my head, I don't go, oh well, let's go get some. The thought comes to my head quite regularly. I was like, I feel like a donut, and then I tell myself, do you feel like a donut, or do you need some water? Do you need to actually be a bit hungry? Like a lot of people need to realize that there's nothing wrong with feeling hunger.
For sure.
Like it's sitting in that hunger is something people need to get used to. Our ancestors used to sit hungry all day long until they got their meal at night.
Have you seen The Comfort Crisis or read The Comfort Crisis?
No.
Very similar thing. So the whole notion of hunger, shelter, etc. We're in a very we have the privilege to be in a comfortable environment right now. And actually acknowledging that and reaching in toward a little bit of discomfort is kind of the name of the book. I think it's Michael Easter or Esther, one of the two. But he kind of goes into the mountains. I don't remember where. I think it might be America, but that could be wrong. And basically like hunts in the snow for weeks at a time. And I think he potentially went in there for a month, or went into the mountains for a month, but he went a whole week without actually catching anything. So they were out hunting elk or bison or something like that. And they didn't get anything. And he was just basically walking the mountains with the like nomad people and trying to catch food. And they had to make their own shelter out there. There was just spending a month out there, and went for weeks at a time. He was like, fuck, like I never realized the comfort, obviously, of just being able to go to the grocery store. Well,
like the Ross Edgley, the guy that does the swimming. He's really, really good in explaining how, like, back in the days when things started getting better, they still kept up certain habits. We're talking about habits today, certain things that kept them weathered, because they understood that if they didn't train these modalities or moving around or being active, they couldn't just all of a sudden something goes wrong and then just hop up and then start going hunting without any of that practice. Their body wouldn't have the muscle. They wouldn't be fit enough. Like they realized during that sweet period of, I guess, farming coming in and mass production of food, when that was coming in, they used to weather themselves, so they would put themselves through strenuous tasks, but then also exposing themselves to the weather as well was a huge one that I think Ross always talks about. And he always goes and does hikes barefoot. He's a madman. They're like probably one of the toughest guys in the world. Like, and
super happy too.
The dude. It'd be interesting to see what like a bad day would be like for that guy, because he puts himself through some absolute torturous conditions, but he's still joking and laughing. And I suppose like that's one way, is just to get over the pain that you're in, is just to have a laugh about it and whatnot.
If anyone wants to check it out, go look at I think it was Joe Rogan's one with him. It was from ages ago, maybe 3 or 4 years ago. But it's got photos. They put up photos of when like his wetsuit was stuck to his neck. And they had to peel it off, and it peeled off the skin.
And they pulled up where his tongue fell off. I seen that episode.
It's nuts.
Well, that was how I actually got onto him, and I actually follow a lot of his stuff on YouTube. So he does a lot of charity stuff, and he does a lot of awareness, like bringing awareness to just all different types of foundations and charities and whatnot. Yeah. He's a good bugger, he also knows his stuff, and he did that program with Chris Hemsworth
yes,
as well.
Did.
Yeah, in Aussie.
Limitless.
Yeah.
Yep. And actually, it's interesting you bring up Ross, because I think, Ross Edgley and even a lot of those, like, I always break habits habits themselves into two different kind of categories. One being the habit, which is an unconscious behavior, and then into a behavior itself, which is kind of more like a conscious action. So if you're doing a behavior, a lot of the times, those are the things that we want to set. So those are the habits we wish that we have later in the future. Whether or not that's just being active, being someone who exercises, or eating healthy and whatever, things like that. A lot of the times when we're trying to set those and when we're setting goals in line with that, we actually don't have them as habits yet. Like, again, we have to think about it every single time we go and do that action. And then conversely, once it becomes a habit, it's unconscious, and that can be both positive and negative. So we can kind of get it working for us or working against us. But both of those almost require, a lot of times we see them as one. So we want to focus on the things that we do well, and that's just going to replace the things that we don't do well. And it's kind of looking at them as a dual process. So our current habits, so the things that we're doing that are unconscious, have served us at some point in the past, right? So us wanting donuts, or for me, wanting a packet of chips, at some point in the past has served me for something. It doesn't serve me now, but it has served me in the past. And whether or not that was comfort, whether or not that was my relief to stress, for me, that was also a lot of the times when I came home from school, because I wouldn't have eaten a hell of a lot during the day, or I would have eaten everything at morning tea so we could play football at lunchtime. And then you get home and you're fucking starving. And so when you're starving, you're just looking for what's quick and available. What's quick and available at home when I was younger was a packet of chips. And so at some point in the past, those things have worked really well for us. They don't, again, serve us now, but we need to acknowledge where they worked well for us in the past so that we can begin to break down and put some of those behaviors that we actually have to think about in replace of. Because if I want to be exercising, but I'm eating a packet of chips, that may or may not serve, right? So if I'm stressed and hungry, exercise may or may not actually fit that void that is actually the packet of chips is actually doing right then and there. And so what I call it's kind of, you have to almost disenchant from the bad habit, and you have to enchant yourself towards the new behavior. And that's mainly because at that point, if you think about the self-talk that you generate, and Ross is really good with this with the negative, but if you think about the self-talk that you generate when you're engaging with the bad habit, so if you think about the self-talk that you have around donuts, or for me, the self-talk that I have around a packet of chips, most of the time, it's completely enchanting. It's like you're fucking on a Harry Potter film, and they've just waved that fucking enchantment spell, and you got the love eyes on it. Like, it's just like, that donut is so fucking tasty. The sugar that's around it.
When you give in, is that what you're meaning? Like if you ever give in? Or...
If you're giving in, or when you're wanting it. So notice the self-talk when you're craving the thing. When you, like I said, it's like an itch. When that itch is in play, you're just like, fuck. Like your mouth is just drooling. And it's like, no, but is there any wonder why you fucking want that? Like when that's the self-talk that you have, is there any wonder that you're going to keep going back for that?
I had a brownie a couple of days ago. And then I was like, man, that tastes so good. And then I was just like, I just don't want it to taste that good. I remember saying to Judith, I was like, man, what, like, I regret it and don't regret it at the same time, because it fucking was fire. Like it hit the spot, like,
Honestly, that's probably a good place to be. Like that's actually the place that you want to be engaging with that type of food. Because most of the time, like think back to another time that you may have had the donuts, or maybe it was a brownie or something, where you get to a point where it's like, actually that wasn't worth it. Like there is always that point of time, right? Like I smash a bag of chips and I'm like, now I'm bloated as shit. My tongue's like burnt from the salt and vinegar. Like, and you just get to that place and you're like, fuck. Like, but we don't think about it. I don't dwell on how burnt my tongue feels or how bloated I feel after eating the bag because I'm still caught in that enchantment of just being like, fuck, though, it tastes so good.
Yeah. Well, I have like this thing that I do, like with that brownie. I was like, oh man, that tasted good. I don't regret it, but I do regret it. So then I won't have that tomorrow.
Yep.
Like I would at least set that in a line in the sand. Yeah. I would be like, okay, well, you're not going to do that 2 days in a row.
Yep.
Like you have a day off.
Yep.
Not to say, because I also like, I'm working on the other end, like how you're saying over there, trying to actually introduce like eating whatever I want sort of normally. Yeah. And so that's why I was saying, oh, well, I won't do this 2 days in a row. I don't want to have a new habit forming.
Correct.
You know, I don't want to be reaching for a brownie once a day, even though I've got extra calories and I skipped a meal here and blah, blah, blah. That's
justifications.
I'm like I'm negotiating with myself.
Hard.
I'm trying to weasel my way to that donut or that brownie or whatnot.
Yep. Well, and so then the opposite is also true. So again, we have to notice our self-talk that we have towards the negative habit, because when we've got that bad behavior coming in and we're just completely under the spell of it, we kind of have to notice that as well as noticing the negative that we actually feel. So noticing the bloatedness, noticing that burnt tongue, whatever you feel. There'll be something bad that you feel about it.
Yep.
Notice the negative too, because that whole process is breaking the spell.
Yep.
But the other way is also true. Most of the times, if you're not, so think about when you didn't run, you notice your self-talk around every single time you went for a run, you were about to go for a run, and when you finished a run. It wasn't that positive.
Yeah.
It was like, fuck, I got to run today. Oh man, this run sucks.
Yeah.
You're like running and you're just like, oh, my feet hurt. Oh, my, I don't know, lungs are burning. Why am I doing this?
Yeah.
Like,
but there still wasn't one run that I ever regretted.
True.
Like that's how I always thought of it. So, but it took me 5 runs of that mindset of thinking, oh man, I can't be bothered. And then man, during it, man, this sucks. Only 10 minutes in going, oh man, I feel like stopping.
Yep.
I'm feeling a bit off today. I don't think I can do the 45 minutes I did 2 days ago.
Yep.
And that was creeping in. But then I just kept telling myself, just like, can you just keep going?
Yep.
Like, go for another. So I would go for 5 more minutes. And then I'd get to that 5 more minutes. I was like, well, you're only 10 minutes off it now. Yeah. So then go 5 more minutes. Yep. Well, you only got 5 minutes left. So can you keep going? Like, it's just pushing myself out to just try and get to that, what I originally put down as what I wanted to do. Yeah.
And then it becomes a goal achieved on the tick list.
Yeah.
But again, like, notice the self-talk, right? Like, and that's what I started the conversation with, is if you just notice the self-talk or the conversations that you're having with yourself, you'll see the direction that you're going. And so again, if we're having, people do this with healthy food all the time, right? Like, salad tastes like shit. And they're like, I don't really want to eat salad. I don't want to eat dry chicken. It's like, well, no wonder you don't want to eat chicken and veg. Yeah. Like, have you noticed the conversation that you've just had with yourself? And then you put burger fuel in place of that. Oh, burger fuel tastes mean. They do make so good, much like gourmet burgers, and those new Kimura fries, they're so good. Yeah. Like, you notice the self-talk that goes on the polar ends of that spectrum. It's like, no wonder you want to do that, and you don't want to do that.
Yeah, it's no wonder your mind wants to go one way.
Exactly.
When you're constantly leading it that way, right? Yeah,
exactly. And the whole process of creating a good habit and breaking your bad habits is noticing the self-talk that you have across those different behaviors and being able to change that conversation. Being able to notice when you're just like under the spell of lust towards chip and dip, and being able to be like, okay, cool, there is actually something that isn't so positive about this. Like, I get to a point where now my tongue is fucking burnt, and this is pointless.
Is that your tell? Is it?
For me, that's actually a tell.
Yeah, so that's what I was going to ask. Like, only until last year, you've gotten the chips to put them down.
Yep.
What was the thing? Was it the burnt tongue that you sort of used as your trigger, or now you've got enough control that you're not even looking for that? You can actually just go and pick up and have half, and then just
sometimes I'll set myself like I'll know roughly how much I want to have before. I'll be like, I'm gonna have a couple.
Yeah.
And I normally, if I have that much, control going into it, I'll try and hold myself to that, because then again, it's another win, rather than a lot of the times prior when I was having chip and dip, it would literally just be, I'm going to smash it. Like, my self-talk was, I'm going to smash this bag. Yeah. It's like, no wonder you fucking smash the bag, bro.
Gets deleted.
Yeah, right? Like,
yeah.
Whereas, so to start with, it was actually noticing the end. So I had to smash the bag, and that wasn't the intent.
Yeah.
Well, it was. Subconsciously, it was. I thought it wasn't, but I tricked myself into thinking that.
Yeah.
When I thought that I didn't want to smash the bag, I did want to smash the bag, and I actually smashed the bag.
Yeah.
But I almost needed to smash the bag to notice the negative repercussion.
Yeah.
So I needed the negative feedback. And that negative feedback was, my tongue is burnt.
Yeah.
It was, now I feel bloated. And you can start noticing that process develop. Like when you're aware of that, you can start noticing. It's like the sugar coma when you have like sugary foods, like donut, ice cream, etc., etc. There'll be this like food coma coming on.
Yeah. Well, like I feel like, you know how you always buy a bag of chips. You know, you don't ever buy the small kids pack, you know? Right. And that's kind of where I got sort of stuck on getting donuts. I was like, well, I only like them from a specific place. So I'm traveling halfway across town. So I better get 4 or 5 just in case I want another one. But like that's also like just negotiating with that inner monologue as well. Just you only need 1 or 2.
Hard.
I know I can eat 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, and I still would not feel satiated. Like, because that's the whole point of that product. Is they always leave you wanting more. You know, like you do end up getting full, but it's just
later.
It's
once you've already gone and had too much.
Yeah, and then, but that's the thing as well. You eat 3 of them, and then you can sit for 10, 15 minutes, and you're like, oh, well, there's another one there. You can just smash that. But that's the problem with, I think, a lot of the unhealthy products is we tend to justify the reasons of getting it in bulk because there'll be a sale on, or there'll be something that literally is 2 for 1, or like you only see them on the unhealthy items. Like I don't ever see 5 tomatoes for $2. You know, it's only for the marketing to get you to have this product that they know.
Well, the fresh produce is going off, and it's pretty much looking pretty stale at that point. Like, you should be selling that.
2 for 5, 10.
There's some mold on there. But yeah, it is like, and I don't know, for me, I think those types of restrictions are always good when, again, you're trying to get those small wins. So if you're like, I have no control around a bag of chips, having a small bag and be like, oh, look, I can have a small bag and I feel good, or like buying 1 donut and be like, well, that was quite nice. Like, I feel good with that. And not having something else there is always positive, right? It gives you a win. It's like, okay, I feel content.
Yeah.
Like, I don't feel like a piece of crap. I actually feel completely fine. And you wake up the next morning, like, that had no impact on my goals or health or anything. And so you get positive feedback from doing that. I still think the end play to be is having the big bag there and being able to be content with it, just like you would having a bag of apples sitting in your fridge and being content them sitting in there for a fucking week.
Yeah.
You know, it's like we still want to have that utter control over just our general environment in that respect. And I think the way to get there is almost to notice the negativity that it gives you in the first place.
Yeah.
So rather than just being caught up on the positive that it gives you, like, notice the negative shit too, but to notice the negative, you kind of got to take it to that nth degree.
Yeah.
You almost have to look back in hindsight to get the negative feedback.
Yeah. Because some people always just do the classic, oh man, I shouldn't have ate that. Feeling heavy.
Yeah.
And then they leave, and they chalk it up as that. It's like, oh, I'm just feeling heavy. It's like the classic KFC.
Yep.
Like, I refuse to eat KFC now.
Yep.
I don't ever want KFC ever again. And I'm happy to say that. I haven't had McDonald's for years.
Yep.
But like, the thing is as well, I can't say that I won't ever have McDonald's because it never ever made me feel the way that fucking KFC made me feel. So I'm just like, I'm never having it. Like, I'd rather have Texas chicken or something like that, you know, and I still won't even have that.
Yeah. But you play that out, right? And you just like, you notice the negative feedback. And that's not like a free for all, okay, you know, go and fucking binge for the next week just to really feel the negative. Like, it's like, no. But when you want it, like, notice if you're going too far.
Yeah.
And notice that you've gone too far, and then notice how you feel once you've gone too far, and actually feel it, like being like, oh shit, like this is what it actually feels like. Like, you do that a few times and you'll break that fucking spell. Like, if just like KFC, you're like, it's not worth it.
Yeah.
Like me, having the burnt tongue now is not worth it.
Yeah.
I've had it so many times that I've never been conscious of it, and I never thought about it. And as soon as I noticed it, I was like, ow.
Yeah.
Like I can't even.
How did I even?
I can't eat an apple afterwards because my fucking tongue hurts. Like,
oh, yeah, because it burns it. Yeah.
I'm like, what the fuck? Like, it's screwed. But you need that to get the feedback to break the bad. And then you can start putting into play. So again, notice like if your conversation around eating a salad or whatever is negative, okay, well, sit in that too. I'm like, oh, okay, I'm having a negative conversation about the salad. I don't need to have that. Like, how does the salad actually make me feel? Well, actually, I feel quite full, satiated. I feel healthy. Like, you almost placebo your way into being healthy just eating the salad. You're like, oh, I feel healthy.
Yeah.
And noticing that the whole way through, just as you would notice the negative effect of the bad habit, you begin to actually find you're more intrinsically motivated, or you have more enjoyment towards the thing that you should be doing, and you have less intrinsic motivation to be doing the thing that you shouldn't be doing.
Yeah. Like we've mentioned, like the habits, a little bit of drinking water, and eating more healthy whole foods is a huge one. I think we definitely need to talk about sleep as well. Sleep is, I think, what most people would probably struggle with alongside the diet.
Yeah, definitely.
When it comes to daily habits and having some poor habits in place.
Yep. Oh, fuck. Hands up.
Yeah. No, but, that's why it needs to be mentioned, like it can't go unaddressed.
Yep.
Because I think it's probably one of the most dangerous things that if it goes unaddressed, you'll be in a spiral, like spiraling downwards, like it's terrible.
I genuinely think at the moment, sleep is probably in its infancy stage of what fitness was for me a couple of years ago. And that is just a lot of people talking about the benefits and all the optimal strategies to try and get a good sleep, just as they would be talking about the optimal strategies of diet and exercise.
Yeah.
Without figuring out the other side of that coin and what staying up late is doing for them from a positive sense.
Yeah.
And I think we have this, for me, it kind of goes back to, we'll get philosophical. It goes back to the whole like meaning crisis thing where, a lot of the times I think we're looking to almost, we're putting a fucking sunglass or a shade over our eyes to try and numb ourselves. We're trying to numb ourselves from the shit that's actually going on in the real world. And, that's what fucking scrolling is.
Yeah.
We get to the end of the night and we're on our phone and we're scrolling and we're just like, we're completely numbing ourselves to the reality of our lives because there may or may not be a lot of meaning going on. And that's unfortunate.
Yeah.
And if we don't have that purpose, we don't have that drive, I think we'll just find ways to numb the shit that we otherwise feel. And so we end up on our phone and we scroll. Or we end up on Netflix and we'll just watch the next one. And a lot of times as well, what I've found personally is when I've given my time out a lot, so if I've given my time out to other people throughout the day and I haven't taken some time back for myself, that time in the evening is when I'll do it.
Yeah.
And it's just not that healthy.
Yeah.
Yeah. Again, I always say like bad habits have served you at some point. They're giving you something. It's our job to figure out what they're giving us so that we can claw that back somewhere else.
Yeah.
And I think sleep is a big one. You can have the best fucking sleep routine in the world. But again, if you're trying to numb yourself from something that you're otherwise not wanting to feel, or you're giving out your time to everyone else and you're not actually like giving yourself time in return, you're not respecting yourself, like you're going to end back up on your phone. It's going to be the same as that fucking donut that you would otherwise have, or for me, that bag of chips that's just lingering in the cupboard. Yeah.
Yeah, like people definitely fall victim to scrolling, and I am always on it. I've definitely come down a lot this year, and I've been active about it. And I find just keeping myself busy, and it's kind of been a little bit like you're saying, like sometimes that was serving a purpose. I actually ended up getting to bed earlier. Now I'm actually just working on the podcast. I'll be creating clips. I'll be doing something for my development, and then I'm getting off of the computer at 9:15 and then coming to bed. It's like, you're coming to bed, and I was just like, sorry, like I'm not trying to neglect you. I'm just trying to go all in on the podcast and the social media this year and just growing my business and getting my development just going. I need to get after it. And unfortunately, I feel like if I catch myself doom scrolling earlier on in the day, my work still needs to get done. So like I kind of keep kicking the can up the road or just not doing the thing straight away. But I still have to get the thing done. So I end up doing it later on and I'm definitely paying the price for that.
Yeah.
But it's also, I get to sleep pretty well nowadays and stuff. I have been making it and something that is important for me to focus on because I know that it is huge, especially for when I was trying to lose weight. I really struggled trying to get to sleep and I was hungry and there's all of these things. Like now I've kind of got no excuse. Like I'm eating enough. I'm healthy. I'm working out every day. I should be getting to sleep better. So I really need to be getting off these devices a little bit earlier.
Yeah, I think the hygiene part of it is always just a good practice to get into. So, like trying to switch off the devices as early as you can. So you've got at least an hour, if not more, but like a gap between being on a device and going to bed. Like we watched a movie last night before we went to bed. Fucked me this morning.
Yeah.
I was like, snooze. Oh, fuck, I can't keep snoozing. I got to get up. And it was
true. Yeah, I've been reading now. Like that's my nighttime thing. So I'm at least off my phone. Probably about half an hour.
Yeah.
Before I try to shut my eyes. By the time I finish reading, then I'll journal, then I shoot into bed, and then have a chat. Go to sleep.
Yeah, like it is like having that hygiene there is definitely important. And again, like that's not to say that you're always going to be getting to sleep or going to bed on time. But again, noticing that. So even for me, right, like just noticing the fact that going to bed later and being on a device longer than what I wanted to be, watching something longer than what I wanted to be or what I would normally do, noticing the negative repercussion of that. Not just being like, oh, I'm tired today.
Yeah.
And leaving it at that. It's like, no, I'm tired today because.
Yeah.
And it is a trickle effect. And so, is there that same urge and temptation to go and stay up late and watch the next thing on Netflix now? Like, no, of course not. And will that happen again in the future? Probably.
Yeah.
But it's my task, it's my job to notice that the next time it then happens.
Yeah.
So that I can continue to kind of build that or dig that trench of that habit pathway so that I know that, okay, this is, not necessarily what I want to be doing.
Or hit it earlier, right?
Yeah.
Realize, okay, that actually messed me up more than I realized it was going to mess me up.
Correct.
So let's do that a little bit earlier.
Correct.
We learned that a lot with 75 Hard.
Yep.
Like the things my body could handle.
Yep.
And how late I could push things. And even with the pre-workout, like, because sometimes I wouldn't be able to get the workout done until really late, and then I'd be having that pre-workout. I was like, man, like it really, I need to focus on trying to get my workouts done earlier so I can, one, have that assistance from the pre-workout, or if I'm doing it late in the afternoon, I can't have the pre-workout.
Suck it up.
Yeah, and just go in and just do a raw dog it.
Yep. Which again, like I think once we can identify that self-talk, like again, you identify the self-talk, you identify the repercussion and associate the two.
Yeah.
And it starts to click in whether or not you have the caffeine or don't have the caffeine, whether or not you have the bag of chips or don't have the bag of chips, whether or not you watch the movie or don't watch the movie. Like there will be a repercussion.
Yeah.
Just notice the repercussion. And a lot of times we associate guilt with it, like, oh, I had my fucking pre-workout late, now I can't sleep. And then you end up not sleeping about not sleeping.
Yeah.
You just like wind yourself into it. It's like, nah, just notice it so that you can then not do that and or do that under the same assumption next time.
Yeah.
Rather than being like, I'm going to have my pre-workout and I'm going to have a fucking good sleep.
Yeah.
No, you're not.
Yeah.
Just like I was never going to not have the bag of chips when it was sitting in the house.
Yeah, yeah.
It's like, okay, now that you notice it though, okay, I can make a more conscious choice.
I guess we probably could leave it at that. That seems to be the going trend of our discussion today is noticing those small moments, right?
Yeah.
Awesome. I reckon we can leave it at that. Give us a like and a follow, guys. And
100%.
And we're trying to grow this year. So please tell your friends if you've got mates that are struggling with any habits or they're thinking about, making some goals for the year or whatnot, reach out to Mikey.
Definitely.
Get yourself a nutrition plan and some habit training.
Hard. And even jump in the comments, start a conversation. So,
yeah, if you're still here, thanks for listening, guys.
Thank
Cheers.
you.
Bye.